abandon the Bush-Cheney policies and take this country to reachable heights.
Yes.
There's far too much conversation about matters not relevant to our country's future. Manifested crimes. Digging up the past with a shovel aimed to discover dirt to harass the reliability of the president-to-be. It's time to move past the irrelevant chatter that has been scattered across the airwaves.
Yes.
It's time to disregard Abomination, to turn off Sean Hannity, and turn on a hope for a better America. To shift the focus from questioning levels of patriotism, elementary schools attended, or conversations about a reverend's belief system, and focus on the issues at hand. It's time for a new vision for America. It's time for a campaign that does not reduce itself to the usual scare tactics, smear, fear, and greed, but on the hopes and pride of all of its citizens, in a nationwide effort to restore common sense and competence into the White House, something it desperately needs. It's time for a president who hears and respects opposing views without immediately denouncing them as unpatriotic, as most Republicans do. It's time for a president who won't offer any position to an incompetent crony we cannot trust. Propose no foreign commitment we have no business attempting to keep, or seeking to make promises that he couldn't possibly fill. It's time for a change. It's time for a president who won't hesitate to stand up against any party faction, any special interest group, or major donor whose demands and desires are contrary to that of the American people. This nation is trying desperately to recover from 8 long years of mismanagement and misrule. Cruel and unusual. Beyond our borders, our national pride barely stays afloat. Along a river of the poor choices and irresponsible actions that we've delivered, instead of flowing as powerfully as a mighty stream, we seem to be looked upon through eyes of disdain. A stained creation brought about by the decisions of the Bush administration. What will keep us from drowning? Crowning the correct captain to command our ship, to steer us past the debris left in the open sea over the past 8 years. With a real commander-in-chief, we can recover a strength that will last. Cast into a sea of endless possibilities, politics as usual will be a thing of the past. It's time for a change. It's time for something that we haven't seen or heard these past 8 years. We need to Byzine their lies until we make them clear. Proactive, the ugly acne of deceit. To quote Barack Obama, we are debating the most important foreign policy issues that we face, and the American people have a right to know the truth. It's not just the Washington insiders who should be part of the debate that is going to shift the focus of our foreign policy. When they send our soldiers into battle, they have to be absolutely sure that it is based on sound intelligence. And they have to tell the truth to the American people as well as the families who are being asked to sacrifice. Whatever mistakes our president makes, whatever opinions our president has, whether we agree with them or not, they have to be committed to telling the people the truth. Setting us free from all secrecy, lies, deceit, fabrication, and dishonesty. It's time for a change. The Republicans will characterize the Democrats as weak and unable to protect America from terrorists. To quote Barack Obama, it's interesting that those who helped to authorize the biggest foreign policy disaster of our generation are now criticizing for making sure that we're on the right battlefield and not the wrong battlefield in the war against terrorism. We need a president who will completely abandon the irresponsible and naive Bush-Cheney policy. We need an overall new philosophy to correct the direction of our future. Unfortunately, we are no safer now than we were before 9/11. We have made a series of detrimental foreign policy decisions. Going into Iraq has not only fanned the flames of anti-American sentiments, but our actual safety has been neglected. But they'll tell you that they're the ones who are for our protection when they elected to invade a country that posed no immediate threat. Again, to quote Barack Obama, we know right now through national intelligence estimates that Al-Qaeda is hiding in the hills between Afghanistan and Pakistan. And because we have taken our eye off the ball, they are stronger now than at any time since 2001. We need a president who wants to fight the right war. This means carefully getting out of Iraq and refocusing our attention on the war that can be won. It doesn't mean to simply cut and run. The crux of our intelligence should refuse to bend. This means being as careful getting out as we were careless going in. In dealing with Iraq, we have been left with no good choices. A robbery of reliability. Casualties of this war. We've scored only bad options and worse ones. Irresponsibility in its worst form. Ever-rising death tolls and dismal stats. A darkened future, and you know who to thank for that. As we stand alone, George W. Bush still refuses to admit his failure to properly lead. We need a president who will figure out the right way to proceed to bring our heroes home. It's time for a change. We need a foreign policy that will earn us the respect of all other nations and not anger or fear. When they hear our words manifested into actions, they'll admire our values and not merely our weapons. It's time for a change. And it's not a matter of completely renouncing the use of conventional force, but our course of action should be fighting the right fight on the right battlefield, when it's essential to our well-being and not simply a choice to kill. That war is the last resort, but never the first. Well-rehearsed tactics of extremism in the defense of liberty, proportionate, never neglectful to innocent civilians or international law. This call of the wild should always be with the aid and support of our allies, and never on an island entirely by ourselves, while the burden falls solely on our shoulders. We shouldn't tell other countries that they're either with us or against us, involving a mindless, bull-headed cowboy mentality, and then actually expect them to help us when our plans fail miserably. It's time to bring back diplomacy. We have to save our middle class. As growing economic inequality becomes more of a reality in present-day society, roasting opportunities like a burnt, crisp piece of toast. Why would we boast about crafting more tax breaks to the richest people in the land instead of those who need them the most? It's time for a change. We have to stop being viewed as hypocrites. Guantanamo Bay, wiretapping, torture, indefinite detention, reinterpreting Geneva Conventions, and the rest on the curbs on our personal liberties and privacies are a great deviation from a true democracy. We have to care about education. Children trapped in corridors of shame disguised as inner-city schools is a crime upon crimes. If dollar signs don't grace your wallet, education can't grace your mind. Instead of improving the actual levels of education, they simply raise the standards by which they measure education, as if the playing fields were equal. Dilapidated buildings with corroded ceilings, overcrowded classrooms, and teachers not trained to teach the subjects they're teaching. Poorly funded no child shall be left behind catastrophes. High dropout rates permanently placed within the nooks and crannies of present-day society. Schools with brand new metal detectors, but outdated books. They're crooks, stealing the dreams of an education away from an entire generation of our children. It's time for a change. And yes, we do need someone in the White House who isn't afraid to stand on their faith. who doesn't beat everybody over the head with it, but isn't ashamed but proud of the role that faith has in their own lives. See, the Christian right will try to tell you that the battle is between godly conservatives and ungodly liberals. They claim the moral high ground. But if the Democrats don't do or say anything to negate these claims and give pause to this, then they enable big-mouth conservatives to be able to accuse the entire Democratic Party of being godless. It's time for a change. In conclusion, to quote Arthur Schlesinger Jr., the promise of this country has always been a fresh start on an equal footing, where differences in race, culture, and nationality are submerged in democracy. It's time for a president to revive that philosophy. We are in desperate need for a pioneer on a new frontier, to completely abandon the Bush-Cheney policies and take this country to reachable heights. Worldwide honor and respectability, freedom and equality, justice for all. A president who truly represents the people, intelligent decisions and reliability through honesty, passion, and decency. A president whose courage, commitment, and stature will always ring loud. It's time for a change. And that time is now.